for today's webinar, where the focus will be on the UAE being open for business. And great timing this week, as we've seen the return of Emirates Airlines back into the region, operating 4 services a week to Dubai and onwards. And great to have that connectivity back into the Midlands region. My name's Stephanie Bowes, and I am the International Business Manager for the Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce. And I'm delighted to be supporting this webinar today on behalf of the corporate group. We've got a great lineup of speakers, and I'm sure you'll be able to benefit and take a few learnings and experiences today from the stories that we will shortly hear about. Myself and Grace will be monitoring the webinar with questions and comments, so please feel free to pop any comments into the chat box below. You know, we look forward to answering the questions. The format will be that the presenters will be speaking first, and then we will take some questions after each presenter, and then at the end we'll do a bit of a wrap up again, so if anyone has any additional comments and questions, feel free to pop them in the box. Just before we kick off on today's session, I just have a very brief update on all things happening here at the Chamber and how you can potentially get involved. You may or may have not seen our ongoing campaign, which is the hashtag Keep Business Moving. That was designed to support and connect and grow the businesses and the members that we have during the difficult time that we've had over the last 6 months. In terms of connecting with members, we're here to kind of raise your profile and talk about the products and services that you have. We're continuing to do Zoom calls with face-to-face with our members. And we've also hosted a number of international now virtual speed networking webinars, which have gone really well, and we will continue to do those over the next couple of months. In terms of support, the policy team have been working really hard on the coronavirus hub, which all the details can be found on the GBCC website. We've been hosting informative webinars such as the ones like today, and obviously lobbying and campaigning activity over the last few months. In terms of growing the awareness of your business, for us, it's all about thought leadership content. So if you're able to provide any posts, any blogs, video tips, kind of responding to the coronavirus at the moment, how we're working digitally and remotely. So if you have any kind of success stories you'd like to share, please do. And we also have a Chamberlink daily newsletter that goes out. And again, you know, please feel free to send in your stories so that we can kind of keep the business moving and keep the information flowing. So without further ado, I'm now going to hand over to Faya Sultan, who is the Director of Corporate Business within the corporate group. Over to you, Faya. Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Steph. Hello, good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining. You will actually hear a lot of good information, hopefully today. My name is Faya Sultan. I have known the corporate group for over 7 or 8 years. I've been working with them for the last 3 years. I represent them in the UK, so I'm based in Dubai, and I will share my contact details in the chat, so you can contact me, you can call me, you can email me. I can give you free advice, and then I can be the connection from the UK to the group in Dubai. I have quite a vast experience with the UAE, because I've worked for the UAE embassy and I worked for the Dubai government, so you can rely on some of the information I can give you. So this is enough for me. I'd like now to introduce Ayman, who is the co-founder and the group managing director of the corporate group. He's based in Dubai. and the corporate is actually consists of brothers running a very, very good operation, and they have great contacts with the government, with the private sector, and with the public sector. And Ayman has been also running the company, and he will tell you more about what is and how to do market entry. So over to you, Ayman.
Thank you, Feha. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, Stephanie, Grace, and everybody for hosting such marvelous webinar today, connecting us virtually to Birmingham, which it has been on my to-do list to visit physically, inshallah, soon, and we're looking forward to it. Today, not only we are going to share with you an exciting information about doing business in the UAE, but also we have a little prize draw and that we can share with you and dear speakers on this panel. So we will give you the surprise at the end of the session, inshallah. For now, I will be walking you through the legal framework as a landscape in UAE in terms of your options of doing business. And there will be one last slide that my colleague Louis, he is expert in FMCG and food and beverage sector. He would be giving you a glimpse of information on how it looks like that sector in UAE. So therefore, I will start my presentation on UAE is open for business. UAE has been doing marvelous job when it comes to COVID management and crisis management in such phenomena, and this is all goes the credit back to our great leadership and the management and of the government here. They've been doing remarkable efforts and an outstanding of results that they've been achieving so far, and demonstrating to the local and the global business community. UAE therefore has been ranked as 11th on safest countries worldwide for COVID-19, 10th best country for treatment of coronavirus cases, and the 9th country with the best leadership as a response to this pandemic. This basically gives you direct information and comfort zone and comfort feeling in terms of the country is really serious to tackle all these issues and getting back to normal, because all the economy sectors are now functioning in full capacity almost, with the recent last economy sector an industry which is reopened as a business, such as kindergarten, school, and now we have the school is reopened last week, and exhibitions and events will be resuming on 15th of September onwards. This gives you enough details in terms of UAE is back on track, welcoming businesses and tourists alike to come and visit UAE and do business. Next, please. All right, UAE is really exciting region to do business because it offers you two competing landscape to choose from. One, you have the mainland, which is the conventional jurisdiction, and then the second one is the free zone, which there are many of them out there here, especially in Dubai. There are 34 or 35 free zones in Dubai itself, and then the rest are scattered within the UAE. And they are segmented in different business parks. Some are focused and specialized for technology, others are for trading, and some others for biotech, technology and so forth, and healthcare also. So therefore, there are different business parts to choose from, and the value proposition in terms of the offers, the promotions, the facilities, the strategic location of these free zones is also some of the parameters that we should all think about when it comes to selecting the right free zone for the operation. Next. Okay, when it comes to licensing in the UAE, in the mainland, generally they are segmented into 4 type of licenses. We have the commercial license, which is designated for contracting works, for trading activities, and for commercial engagement. For professional licenses, it comes to when we deal with the delivering of services, consultancies, and maintenance. Industry is obviously dealing with manufacturing and industry related activities. And finally, tourism, it deals with anything of inbound and outbound travel tour operators. Next, please. To give a holistic picture in terms of what are the different ways of doing business in the UAE, if I start the easiest way, it would be going freelance in some capacity, such as starting from the from the right side of the picture. Here there are few selective free zones. They are offering a freelance permits, in which it will give you a residency solution and then a permit per se. It's not really as a license, so it's not considered as a company, but rather than it's a freelance permit to do certain work within a certain business activities within the region here in Dubai, for example. The other one is to conduct business indirectly through appointment of commercial agent, and that becomes by having a commercial agent, local commercial agent appointed in the UAE to deliver certain works and transactions. And this would be the easiest and the cheapest way of, or the lowest way of investment, because you would be operating from the UK since you have appointed a person in UAE. The offshore setup, we have two offshore structures as a setup here in UAE. One is from Jebel Ali Free Zone, offshore setup, and then the second one is RAK ICC offshore setup. It is very equivalent to BVI and Cayman Island setups that primarily use of it is to act as a holding for the equity ownership and properties in the freehold, freehold properties in Dubai, for example. Setting up in free zone, it has the establishment, which is a 100% sole establishment, ownership, single ownership, and then you have a company ownership, which is multi-partners, and then a branch of foreign company. To set up in the mainland, it has the same equivalent structure, such as sole establishment, which is actually catered as a full foreign ownership for the service industries. Limited liability company, it is 51 and 49 that gets segmented between the local partner and the foreign ownership. And under the new FDI law, today we have the capacity or the option to for the full foreign ownership in certain sectors and activities that they are permitted. And then there is a procedure to go through in terms of approval processes with the committee from Ministry of Economy. Branch of foreign company is or a representative office is another platform to get engaged and deliver your services, though the foreign entities are not allowed to conduct trading activities on that, since the UAE company law mandates to have a limited liability company for the foreigners for that business activity. Branch in free zone, and then the civil company partnership, it's basically having number of professional people as partners to deliver certain scope in terms of consultancy or legal services in the UAE. Next, please. This slide, I'm giving it to my colleague, Louis, and he can take over. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Ayman, for the introduction. My name is Louis Balbena. I'm heading one of the subsidiary company of the corporate group, which is called Corporate Trade House. And I'm delighted to share insights about the topic of the e-commerce in UAE, which is current and relevant these days. Before I go through with my slide, let me give you a snapshot of the e-commerce in the UAE. A lot of entrepreneurs and customers ask, is e-commerce in the UAE the new normal? I would say very yes. Dubai and the UAE remain a hub for the e-commerce growth, whether in attracting startups, in creating multiple channels to ensure safe and secure payments. Currently in the UAE, e-commerce represents 4.2% of the retail revenue, which is estimated to grow by 23% in the next 2 years. Recent statistics also illustrate this change very clearly. 196 licenses were issued to the e-commerce business sector in the UAE during May 2020 only. So that is the highest number of business licenses to be issued in a sector. 300% increase in consumer demand for e-commerce services in the UAE was recorded in the first 5 months of 2020. And 943 licenses were issued to new business in the first 3 months of 2020, 179% increase from the first 3 months of last year. Now, how can we trade FMCG products through the major e-commerce platform in the UAE, such as the Amazon.ae, Noon.com, once your company has formed or appointed a legal agent? Of course, you need to be registered as a vendor. So to register as a vendor, you need to have a valid trade license, a tax identification number, and basically the necessary authority approvals of the product, which has in 2 ways. So you need to have an approval for product registration itself and the label assessment requirements. So for the product registration, before you can import the products to the UAE or trade in the country, you need to have it registered. So the purpose of the product registration in Dubai municipality, for example, focusing on FMCG products, is consumer safety. So this process permits to fold adequate information to evaluate the safety of the products. At the same time, it specifies that each product will be imported in Dubai for local trading should be registered in the proper authorities such as Dubai municipality and get a registration certificate, which may be asked at the time of the clearing of the shipment. So either your shipment is going to go through airport in Dubai or at one of these seaports. So one of the requirements would be clear product of the photo. You have the artwork of the label, attested free sale certificate, which is in the UK, normally they send it through from DTI, the ingredients report, certificate of analysis, the GMP certificate, and all the quality certificates such as the ISO, HACCP, SGS for food and non-food, and the Dubai municipality username and password, which you are going to get it once your company has formed or through your local agent. Now, in parallel to that, we have the label assessment, which we need to fulfill as well, from brand name to product name, net weight, all the details of the product on the label should be in there. One of the most important and crucial thing on the label assessment would be Arabic translations of the ingredients list, origin, production, and expiry dates. So these requirements need to be fulfilled if ever like one of the importer company or you guys wanted to import your products and basically sell it to the market or in the UAE. So once you registered as a vendor, you can upload your listings or all of the products into any of the e-commerce platform or the marketplace. So of course you need to have the approved label or product, high resolution photos, banners if required, like digital banners for marketing purposes to promote your products on the platform itself, and the product details or the specifications of the product. And then once it is approved, you are ready to trade. So basically, as a customer, you can scroll down, you can search the products you want to buy, and then it's going to be either fulfillment, such as the FBA by Amazon, or basically get it picked up from your warehouse to storage as one of the options. And then deliver your products to the customers and receive payments afterwards. So what is the benefits of the product registration? So your label and the brand itself are going to be protected in any way. you have the ability to import and re-export your products and hassle-free trading inside and outside the UAE. Most of the companies in the UAE, they store their products either through the free zone or the mainland for different benefits with such as the VAT and custom duties and alike. And once your product is registered in Dubai municipality or with the proper authority, you have the 5 years validity of your certificates of approval, and then you can trade it easily and freely in the UAE market. That is for now for me on this slide. Back to you, Ayman.
Thank you, and I will pass it to the organizer.
Thank you both. That was really, really informative. Ayman, you do have a prize draw, I believe, today as well, that you're going to give away a prize. Am I right?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I'll keep it at the end of the Q&A session.
Fantastic. Okay. Yeah. So from there then, we're going to now move on to our next guest speaker, which is Mr. John Martin St. Valerie, who is the CEO of the British Business Group, Dubai and Northern Emirates. Over to you, John.
Thanks very much, Steph, and good morning or good afternoon, everyone, wherever you happen to be. Many thanks, firstly, to the Chamber in Birmingham for hosting this event, and for it to be driven by the corporate group, of course, who we know very well here in Dubai. I'm delighted also on the call we have one of our greatest collaborative partners for the British Business Group, Dubai and Northern Emirates, and that's your International Trade Advisor, Jane Matty, for your region from Department for International Trade. So that's great. And just a very quick introduction, really. The British Business Group, Dubai and Northern Emirates is an ecosystem of British-owned and or managed businesses here in the region. There's also a BBG in Abu Dhabi, and we work very collaboratively together, as you can imagine, as one country, one federation. Now, the key thing about any membership organization, as we'll all know, is that organization is after the same commodity as the others, and that's time. That's our members' time. So any time we spend with our members putting on events or webinars, as it has been in recent weeks and months, or roundtable gatherings to get like minds together, the thing we have to do is to make sure that there's some sort of real benefit or golden nugget, as I would call it, to take away from that event. So we try and do this by being the collective voice of the British business community. Firstly, to HMG, Her Majesty's government on the ground here from the embassies in both Abu Dhabi and Dubai. And in fact, the BBG administrative office is based in the grounds of the embassy here in Dubai. So that makes the relationship very strong. We're very fortunate there to work with them. But also working with other business councils. So in other words, the collective voice of the British business community is great. And this has arisen through the COVID-19 crisis, where we felt it really important to deal with the other nations' business councils or groups moving forward, so we can be representative of many thousands of companies, which is quite an interesting listen for local and federal government, as well as HMG on the ground, to be able to deliver real business opportunities to our members. That's the golden nugget, as far as I'm concerned. And along with that, of course, corporate and market intelligence as you move forward. Now, Ayman and the team asked me, and kindly I was honored to tell you a little bit about my story. So anecdotally, you know, what it's like living and working here in Dubai in particular. I know some of you know Dubai well, some of you might not know it so well. So for those that do know Dubai well, you know, feel to put your hand up and say, no, John, that's not quite right. I'm basing my personal story for over the last 22 years, about myself and young family as they were at the time, arrived here in Dubai. Actually, it was 22 years exactly, just 2 weeks ago. So August 98. It's pretty hot then. We didn't have the fantastic Dubai International Airport that we have now. And we came down the steps of the plane onto the tarmac, pretty hot tarmac it was at the time too. Anyway, I was coming over here to represent a UK financial services business that was just starting to establish a fully fledged branch that needed to be regulated by central bank at that time. There was no international financial center. In fact, there were very few free zones at all. It was only really Jebel Ali, the deep sea port free zone that we spoke about in those days. So I was responsible to set up a branch, to recruit the right people and start to build a business across the region. So the first thing was, how do I do this? I don't have a network here. And I was very fortunate in the early weeks to be invited along, as used to happen from time to time then, to a cocktail party at the embassy. Oh, very grand. My wife and I thought, this is marvelous. We'll go along and try and meet some people. And I met someone at that party who said to me at that cocktail party, said, John, look, what you need to do really, best advice I think I ever received in the early days, was you should join the BBG, or British Business Group. I thought, well, what's that? And he explained that exactly as it is now, it's an ecosystem of professionals, owners or managers of British related businesses across all sectors. So you can find there the lawyer you need to deal with, John, to help establish this branch. Maybe the accountant, maybe the recruitment firm, maybe even how to find somewhere to live. There was no property market at the time. It was all rental. And as I say, that was probably the best piece of advice I was given as member. I think it's member 409 I was at the time. And now as chairman of the group, 21 years later, actually, after I joined the group. When we speak to new potential members, they want exactly that as well. So the value proposition I mentioned just now, but also to build their own network if you're new into a country. So it's been invaluable in that way. That network enabled me to establish this foreign branch of a UK business. And quite quickly, we built up a team of 20 or so qualified regulated consultants. And our business book began to grow very well. 2001, that was an interesting time for the world, wasn't it? With 9/11 and then particularly in this region, things started to change a little bit. It was sort of a little step back. What's going to happen next? And for one reason or another, this organization I was representing withdrew from the market. We were their only international business, but they wanted to withdraw. Now, I didn't want to close down that business and just say goodbye to everybody. So I managed to get authority to sell that business on to a third party. And that was a company coming in from the Far East, actually, another British company that wanted to come in with a platform of an existing business and license and a client base. So we managed to achieve that within about a year. Now that year for me was a real sort of interesting thinking time. Thinking, what do we do next? Do I go back to the UK, back into the rat race, so to speak? The kids had settled into school. We'd started to find that the lifestyle here, albeit expensive, was rewarding for bringing up a family. So a seed of an idea, along with some other colleagues, was colleagues and friends, was perhaps to set up a consulting business that assisted companies coming into the market. So it wasn't all elbows down at the ministry. It was a professional guidance program for companies coming into the market and having a secure business, if it was owned from back home or even if it was an entrepreneurial startup. So I established a firm then called Links Group. The Links Group is still in the market, and we were pioneers of what's now colloquially known as the corporate nominee model, where many businesses, but particularly the likes of the corporate group and other BBG members that offer the service, whereby, if appropriate, and you're on the mainland rather than in the free zone jurisdiction, as Ayman was describing earlier, on the mainland, you need some form of local partner involvement. And so the corporate nominee meant you could choose maybe to have a company, a local company, that became your local partner or agent, whether you were a branch of a UK business, or in our case, any international business, or to have a local partner that needs to hold equity as per the commercial companies law. So that corporate nominee model became pretty popular and grew quite fast. And so to cut a a fairly long story short, the Links Group was sold to a global professional service firm back in 2016, and it actually took me until mid last year, but then I fully exited the business. And I tell that story because it's very similar now. Coming into this market, it's essential that through the likes of the corporate group and others, you get that advice almost before you get here, rather than just landing on the ground and thinking, what do I do next? It's far more sophisticated now, but there are pitfalls to avoid. I'd be delighted during Q&A if anyone has any specific questions to address those. What I also wanted to add is Feha, who spoke first today. I first engaged with Feha back in London in the mid 2000s, when she was with the Dubai Tourism and Commerce Marketing. She alluded that it was Dubai government, but she was representative of Dubai government in the UK. And together with our friends from Department for International Trade, or UKTI as they were at the time, we traversed the length and breadth of the UK, coming to chamber conversations such as this, but in person, or DIT or UKTI events to address the audience. And it always struck me, but of course my angle was talking to these businesses about saying, if you're interested in doing business in the UAE or Dubai and Northern Emirates in particular, then you've got to be here on the ground and establish a business. But you've got to be careful, because you've got to establish in the right jurisdiction or in the right way, because in those days, and even now actually, when I talk about what I'm doing at the moment, from a business consulting perspective, regrettably, we spend more hours unwinding unsuccessful setups than we do signposting new setups. Now that sounds very negative. It doesn't have to be, but it's because we're in that business. We speak to companies all the time. So in 2016, coming out of the sort of the company formation space and going all around the UK and meeting these companies who often said, well, John, we don't really need to be on the ground there, but we want to access the Middle East or wider regional market. And can we use Dubai as a hub? And absolutely you can. And Ayman again spoke a little bit about that with the sole proprietorships or commercial agencies. So these days, since exiting my former business, but while still very involved with the British business community and new businesses coming in and those that are already here, I set up my own family firm actually in 2016, and am now more involved in it now that I've been released from my other business. And I mention that because it might be appropriate for some of you here, insofar as this firm, I say family firm, it's myself. We're a small boutique firm and wish to stay that way. It'd just be agile and productive. Our focus is for you, potentially our clients. If you're successful, we're successful. It's not about high fees in the beginning and over promising. And what Jackson MSV does through my son-in-law who are here, my brother who's a barrister and broadcaster in the UK as a non-executive director, along with another finance expert who's a non-exec, and a senior lawyer here in Dubai who works with us. What we're doing is saying to individuals from an FDI perspective that are interested in this market, we're saying, look, slow. You don't need to rush in and just take either the most cost-efficient option or what appears to be the most cost-efficient option to come into the market straight away. You need to assess, but you don't necessarily, as Ayman said, need to be on the ground. So we work as a representative office for limited brands in certain sectors to find the opportunity for them, ideally find a deal for them before they come into the market, or continue to represent them because they don't really need to be on the ground anyway. So sorry, that was just a little bit of a talk about Jackson MSV, because it's another element of company formation or doing business in Dubai that's important. And I noticed on the slide from the corporate group, which is great, UAE and Dubai is open for business. It is very much so, with social distancing norms and all the security surrounding that as is necessary. But we must, I think we all a couple of months ago were saying, right, we must plan for when we come out of this awful pandemic. actually now, when you think of it more academically or practically, I should say, it's more about working through. We don't know when this will end, but we continue to do business. The fundamentals of Dubai and the UAE remain the same. You know, it's years ahead of the wider region as far as infrastructure is concerned. Transportation, communication, medical, schooling, the whole gamut of services is here. So still a very attractive place to do business. And as I say, I'm delighted to take some questions. I hope I haven't spoken for too long, but I'll hand you back to Steph, the organizer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John, and what a great story. I'm hoping you can hear me okay, and my connection seems to be not very unstable today, but hopefully we can crack on now. And you know, and really clear to see that the UAE does present attractive opportunities for British businesses, you know, across a multitude of sectors. You have had quite a number of questions actually, so I'm going to open the floor to you at the moment, and then we're going to switch to Jane, and then we'll bring everybody back again, and then we'll proceed with the more questions. So just to start with, so the first question we had was from Nasra Haji, and she is saying that she has an amazing life-changing health digital innovation company. How do we navigate around new innovation to the UAE?
Nasra, that's great and absolutely spot on for the moment, because as part of my role as chairman of the BBG, but also in my private work life, I work quite closely with the Foreign Investment Office, as do the corporate group, of course. And the health and technology combined are two of the key tenets of the proposition or the strategic focus for the country moving forward, without a doubt. So there are all sorts of, I mean, there are free zone opportunities with, you know, Healthcare City. There are particular tech hubs setting up both in Dubai and Northern Emirates and in Abu Dhabi. And so again, with the right advisor on the ground, what this is all about is connecting. Now, as a, you know, I don't know whether that's a startup, Nazar, or whether it's an existing business in the UK, but as what I label as a UK business, then through the BBG, we could definitely be able to connect you with either end user contacts or those people that might be able to advise you on, you know, how you should perhaps enter the market. But combining the two the technologies there of tech and health, and another one, but not necessarily connected, fintech, is where there's an enormous amount of assistance, because the economy here is going to very much rely on that innovation coming into the market. Hope that helped.
Fantastic. Hope that's helped. Is that okay? So next question is from Mark Shenton, and he's asked, how is health and safety in engineering promoted in the UAE? Are there training courses promoted in Dubai for reliability engineering? We have created ISO level infrared and ultrasound online courses for level 1 and level 2, as well as in-person courses for businesses.
Great, Mark. Yeah, that's not an area of my expertise, but again, anecdotally, I can talk a little bit about how both in conjunction with each other, British Business Group and Department for International Trade in particular are working closely together, because what we have is speciality sector focus groups. You know, both ours are in line with DIT actually, because it makes sense for a collaborative effort. So construction and infrastructure is one of those verticals. We then have lateral groups, obviously, that cross them all, like insurance and legal, etc., etc. But for your particular point, it's quite interesting, because coming out of lockdown, the construction and infrastructure roundtable, which is about 8 of the major contractors, British contractors in the UAE, have had these roundtable events, one of the hybrid events I was talking about before. So some of them online, some of them actually in the room. And this point about health and safety direction and application, I found really interesting, because it's something that certainly local and federal government here have recognized, that to continue to be world class, they need to apply these standards. And those standards were really brought to the surface about 18 months, maybe 2 years ago, when the whole vision of Expo, that enormous infrastructure build that inshallah will be taking place next year now, it's all about sustainability, mobility, and the rest of it. So government really needed to display that those types of standards that you mentioned, as I say, I'm not particularly au fait with them myself, but have to be put in place. And so Expo is probably the best example of the region as far as putting those measures in place. And there's, I believe there's the social part of it as well. I can't remember the exact term, but of course, how itinerant workers and everything are treated and developed in that regard as well. So there's a social element. So again, I would say to you, it's absolutely top of the agenda. Because now it's not just Expo, it's every other infrastructure project and a lot of change of use projects, as you can imagine, that need to have, as a matter of course, that level of governance, if we can put it that way, in place. So yeah, it's a good space to be in, I'd say.
Excellent, thanks, John. I'm now going to hand over to our final speaker, Jane Matty, who is our lead international trade advisor here at the Birmingham Chamber of Commerce. Over to you, Jane. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. If I could just echo some of John's comments. Certainly the British businessmen groups all around the GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, are very, very active, and certainly I first came across them when I took a trade mission out to Saudi Arabia. That was back in November 1999, but my actual first visit to the Gulf region was to Dubai, and that was 21 years ago. So I've travelled out there a number of times. My last visit out to Dubai was in January this year, so I have got a little bit more sort of up-to-date experience of going out there. But just to give you a bit of an overview of the Department for International Trade, because certainly John's mentioned that in terms of the links with the British Businessmen Group. So the Department for International Trade is obviously a government department here in the UK. We've been around for a long, long time, but under the name of the Department for International Trade, it's been sort of the last 4 years. And it really has sort of 4 areas of support. The main area which I cover and working with companies in the Birmingham area is export support. So it's assisting companies to export their products and services overseas. And it could be to those companies that are new to export and are looking to export for the first time, to other companies that need help in growing their export business and maybe wish to look at new overseas markets. DIT also assists with investment in terms of overseas companies that are looking to invest in the UK. So what we are looking for, obviously, in the Birmingham and West Midlands sort of wider area is to look at foreign investment coming in to the region to help it grow. One of the other aspects of DIT is trade policy work, and this is obviously the very interesting part at the minute, with us obviously going through transition and leaving the EU at the end of this year. There has been a lot of work going on in terms of setting up free trade agreements with various countries around the world, so that is a huge of importance currently at the minute. And then sort of the last part of DIT is just generally promotion of the UK, and that is around sort of the GREAT campaign, which you may have seen in various of different areas of the UK and overseas. You see it when you come through Heathrow or come into different airports or train stations in the UK, so very, very much promoting the whole of the UK. Grace, next slide, please. So just a little bit about how we can help companies locally from the Department for International Trade. So within the West Midlands, the Department for International Trade support, which is free of charge support, is delivered by all of the Chambers of Commerce in the West Midlands. Within the Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce, where I'm based, we also have the International Business Hub, where we have 4 departments within the International Business Hub that can help companies. So we have ourselves, where there are 4 international trade advisors working under the Department for International Trade. We have an export documentation department for obviously companies that need help, advice, needing their documents standard, including Arab certificates of origin. We have a translations department, which can assist companies in terms of obviously communicating with businesses overseas if work needs to be translated, or it may be that interpreters are needed. And then we also have an international projects team that can help companies with specific projects, but very much looking at companies that have a innovative and sort of technological sort of design product and need help to look at overseas. So as I mentioned, I'm one of the international trade advisors. There are 4 of us in Birmingham. There are around 27 of us in the West Midlands region. We work with companies on a free of charge basis, and really it's to help companies export for the first time or develop their business overseas. And we do this through accessing the Department of Trade network, which is globally in over 100 countries. So that is linked into your British embassies, high commissions, consulates overseas, where there are commercial sections, where people that work in those commercial sections can really be your eyes and ears on the ground and help you to do business in those markets. Certainly, we work with a lot of companies that want to export to the UAE for the first time. It could be that further down the line, when they have some business in the UAE, they wish to maybe set up, and obviously we can link them to organisations like the corporate group and others that can obviously assist them with that. But in terms of just giving you a bit of an overview of DIT services and support, a lot of what companies want to talk to us about is actually finding contacts overseas. So we can do that by sort of market research and helping companies understand the best route to market. It may also be looking at IP protection. We run various events and webinars around doing business overseas, and I'll come on to a few that are specifically around the UAE market shortly. Certainly it's been mentioned obviously about e-commerce and digital advice. That's something that we offer to help companies internationalize their website, look at e-marketplaces overseas. And certainly we know of companies that have helped and looked at selling their products via Amazon in the UAE and other marketplaces. Some companies will know DIT from actually attending overseas exhibitions and receiving funding support through us. So at some of the very large exhibitions, and I'll talk about a few in a minute, you will see a huge British presence. And for some companies that are eligible, they're able to receive some funding from the UK government to go out to these shows. And finally, we sort of have various things on the great.gov.uk website, which are live business opportunities where the teams overseas based in the embassies may find specific sales leads and opportunities for companies where there is obviously a genuine need for your product or service. So it's always worth having a look at that. And you can also create an online company profile so that buyers can actually try and find you. So in terms of our help and support, it's wide ranging. There's advice online, there's advice through ourselves as international trade advisors, and it's very much working with you to develop your business overseas. Next slide, please, Grace. Right, in terms of support with UAE from DIT, I mentioned that most support within the DIT network is delivered via the embassies, and there are 2 embassies in the UAE, in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. They can help and support, and when I took a group of companies out to a big trade show, a healthcare trade show in Dubai earlier this year, they assisted us because they did put on a large reception in the garden of the embassy in Dubai, where there were around 500 people, where they invited not just British exhibitors that were at the show, but multipliers, buyers, importers, influencers within that sector to actually meet UK companies. But the support in terms of actually finding contacts and help and advice is delivered by an organisation called the British Centres for Business, BCB, in Dubai. I know John knows them very well. It's headed up by a gentleman called Joe Hepworth, who's been out there for a number of years, and they do have strong links with the British Businessmen's Group out there as well. But in terms of really support to you as British companies and local companies in the Birmingham West Midlands area, that's something that we can sort of help you with. So we have a few events and webinars that are coming up. Obviously, certainly we have run events out to the market in the past where we've taken trade missions, but obviously a lot of those have turned virtual. So we have a virtual Meet the Distributor event that's coming up at the end of this month, and it's with an organisation called Truebell, who are an independent food distributor covering the GCC markets. So that could be something for those companies that are obviously involved in food products that may wish to have their products distributed around certainly the UAE market and wider GCC. This could be something to have a look at. And then we have some activity again centred around sort of food, which is what we call Midlands Engine activity. So Midlands Engine is a programme that is working with companies. It's a government initiative working with companies in both the East and West Midlands. And we have, over the past 4 or 5 years, taken groups of companies out from the Midlands area to the UAE. So there is a large exhibition called Gulf Food, which takes place at the end of February next year. Food and drink exhibition. I visited it 15 years ago, but it has grown immensely since then in the Dubai World Trade Centre. We are organising a virtual Meet the Buyer here in the UK this November, and that's really a precursor to an actual trade mission to the show. Obviously there could be changes to that depending on current situation, but we are planning a trade mission out to the show where there will be a showcase of British food and drink products from the Midlands. There will be retail visits, those type of activities really to promote the best of products from the Midlands area. And then later in the year, next year, there is a visit out to Arab Health. So this is a show that I've been out to for the past 4 years. I've taken companies from the Midlands with a colleague out to Arab Health, where we've had a Midlands Engine stand, promoting products, companies that are looking specifically at sort of digital technologies within the healthcare field. Certainly digital health is a huge opportunity out in the UAE, and products that can assist with living with conditions such as diabetes, cancer, but also sort of wearable technology to actually assist people to be able to help with their conditions is certainly an opportunity. So we've been out there for the past 4 years, and we've normally done some type of showcase opportunity on the stand, organised receptions, meet the buyers. So there's certainly a lot that we do from the region in terms of going out to the UAE. We also have taken visits out to the Big Five, which is a huge construction show in the UAE. So there are certainly things that we're doing. Some of them will obviously be in market, inshallah. And hopefully a lot of it will still, certainly for this year, be obviously virtual. But obviously we're looking to try and put companies in touch with buyers and do that obviously on a virtual format. So really in terms of the support that we offer companies, it's here, it's available. You're paying for it in your taxes. So do users. I mean, for some companies, it may be that the UAE or wider GCC markets isn't that suitable for them at the minute, and they may need to look at easier markets, but certainly the UAE is a very good market. There's lots of opportunities out there. It's just making sure that you are ready, for a market such as that, which has some complexities to doing business. My details are at the bottom there, so I'm more than happy to sort of put you in contact with other colleagues that may be more local to you around the West Midlands, as I just work with companies in the Birmingham and Solihull area, but more than happy to do that. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jane. And as Jane has said, you know, we have a lot of support that you're able to access through the DIT, but also through the Chamber and our international team. So please do get in touch. We've had quite a few more questions come up. So what I'd like to do now is probably kind of ask all speakers to kind of be on hand, and I'll go through a couple of questions now. First one is from Mark Freiberger Postel, and he's asked, for the professional service license, roughly how long would it take to get a freelance or an indirect agency license? I'm not sure which one of you want to answer that.
I'll go for this one this time. So if it's a freelance permit, normally it's a very simple process. Normally it takes up to 1 week to get the licensing or the permission done through certain competent authorities here within the free zone, for example, as TCOM. And there is the regulations of the residency behind it, which takes up to 1 week to 2 weeks time. So that's the freelance concept. When it comes to an actual company set up under a professional license, then we talk about again a few days to 1 week time to set up the whole license and the structure behind it. If it is a sole establishment entity, or if it's a civil company partnership, and then all right after the licensing formalities, the residency and the bank account setup can start all the way to the end. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And following on from that, we have a question from Paul. Is the registration procedure the same for products such as chocolate, couverture, which will be used by professionals such as chocolatiers and chefs, the same as FMGs? If no, what's the difference?
I would be happy to answer that question. So I would assume the product is like part of the actual product. It could be an ingredients to create a chocolate or something. So it's part of the FMCG. It's either that could be a chocolate, the actual product, or one of the ingredients to make a chocolate or something. It can be registered under the Dubai municipality. How long does it take to get it approved? Once you've collected all the required documents, so normally it takes between 7 to 14 days, and you will get the approval of the registration. And then you can import it, and then you basically can trade it to the UAE.
Fantastic. Thank you, Louis.
You're welcome.
Okay, so next question from Content Ed. What sources might you suggest for companies interested in infrastructure, particularly interested in renewable energy and transport? And does the UAE currently have a COVID ban on large gatherings?
I could maybe take this one, Steph.
Thanks, John.
The second point, as far as gatherings are concerned, they're strictly controlled by, or they're permit controlled in effect. So the authorities have to allow anything beyond immediate family to have an event has to be permit controlled by validated venues, and by that I mean generally hotels or business groups, etc. A good example was we had our AGM after party for the BBG yesterday, and we managed to have 60 people at a great hotel in Dubai, all permit driven, very, very closely monitored as far as social distancing. So it wasn't a wandering about type event. It was more of a static event, but all sanitizers, masks, etc. And sorry, the first part of the question was again, remind me.
Sorry. What sources might you suggest for companies interested in infrastructure, particularly interested in renewable energy and transport?
Great. Again, well, again, from a BBG and HMG, or Department for International Trade perspective, you would, as mentioned before, we do have these verticals. So either DIT or myself at BBG will be able to signpost individuals that are looking to speak to the right people, either from again, a permit point of view or a business opportunity point of view. The great thing about the BBGs here is the members that already exist in those sectors, for example, are more than happy to speak to people and companies that are looking to come into the market to, again, advise them from first-hand experience as to who they should be speaking to. So I think signposting would be our route from a BBG, and Jane, I think you'll agree, from a DIT perspective, and of course Joe and the team at BCB as well.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to say there will be some help and support available and information that we can find for you about opportunities in those areas.
Great.
Fantastic. And I think we've got time for probably one more question. And again, this is from Paul. Is there a directory for commercial agents with areas of their expertise? I'm guessing that's on the back of his previous.
I don't know of one. I don't know, Ayman, if you know of a directory.
The same,
as such.
yeah. I don't know if there is such thing, but we could look into it in details if the audience could email me, and then I would come back to you with a specific answer on that. But I haven't seen it by myself so far.
That's great. And obviously all the speakers' details and email contacts have been posted into our chat box. But after this session, you know, we're happy to email out all of the contacts from our speakers today. And if you're okay, Ayman, as well, to share your slides from your presentation today.
Yes, sure, I will do that. And it's time for me to show a prize I would like to showcase to the winner in the prize draw today. And we would do a picking up of the winner today over the webinar. So we'll see who's the lucky winner. The book goes to the audience who made their time available and to hear the best of information out there. Okay, I have Keith Harvey from Dundee and Angus Chamber of Commerce. Keith is the lucky winner today. So thank you for coming and attending the webinar. And the book is actually the best-selling book of our leaders here, talking about his 50 stories throughout his leadership career and in 50 years. And the same copy I would also would like to extend it to the speaker panelists and the organizers here. So you will guys you guys will get one copy for each. Yeah. Okay. John, Steven, Stiffy, Jane, and also Faiha.
Thank you so much, Ayman.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well done, Keith. I'll make the necessary introductions between yourself and Ayman today.
Could I kindly just say something before we close? For those who are happy for us to contact them, we have a newsletter that comes out once a month, which is really good, very short. It's not War and Peace. It's quite nice and precise. Please, could you let the chamber know that we can contact you and give them your contact details so we can stay in touch?
Absolutely. Brilliant. Thanks, Faya. Thank you, John. Thank you, Ayman. Thank you, Louis. Thank you, Jane. Really informative session. We've had some great feedback already in the chat box. So that's it for today. Thank you once again, and take care, everybody.
Thank you all.
So much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steffi. Thank you, everybody from the chamber. Thank you very much.